On October 7, 2019, the cities of Cape Coral and Fort Myers in Florida became the scenes of a series of violent crimes that shook the local community. Multiple 911 calls reported a domestic dispute outside a spa in Fort Myers, Florida. When police officers reached there, they found Melissa Montanus, also known as Mayla, was badly beaten. Police officers asked Melissa about the incident. She explained that she had been dating a man named Wade Wilson, and their relationship had been rocky. The previous night, they were at a Buddha bar, where Melissa gave Wade her keys because she didn't have a purse. As the night progressed, Wade decided to go to a friend's house for recreational drug use, but Melissa didn't know the friend and didn't want to go. They argued, and Wade, holding her keys, took her car and left with 3 other people, leaving her behind.
He stole my vehicle and went.
So did you know he was going to take your vehicle?
No.
How did you find out that your vehicle was...
I saw it leaving the Buddha.
Okay. So you were stuck at the Buddha without your car?
And Amy was out there. She was watching it drive away as well, and she said, "It's okay, come to my house."
So did you end up going to her house?
Yes.
And did you spend the night at her house?
Yes.
Upset, Melissa stayed at her friend Amy's house for the night. The next morning, she had many missed calls from unknown numbers, which turned out to be Wade trying to contact her. By this point, Melissa was completely done with Wade. Their already rocky relationship had reached its breaking point. She planned to meet Wade at the spa which she owned to get her car back and end things for good. Her friend Amy took her to the spa, arriving at the same time as Wade, who was driving a black Nissan Versa instead of Melissa's car. Wade demanded Melissa get in the car, but she refused. Enraged, Wade tried to pull her into the car, but Melissa resisted by raising her arms. This angered Wade further, and he tackled her to the ground as the car, not in park, moved forward and grazed their legs. Wade, significantly larger at 6 feet 6 inches compared to Melissa's 5 feet 2 inches and just over 100 pounds, overpowered her. He continued beating her as they moved upstairs to her spa. Witnesses, who saw the assault, called 911. Outside the spa, Wade held Melissa against the wall by her neck and punched her face, causing her nose to explode with blood. But here a question could arise in your mind. Why did Amy not intervene when Wade was beating Melissa? This is because Wade threatened Melissa to stay in her car, otherwise he will kill her. Despite this, Melissa managed to escape and run downstairs to another business for safety. Wade fled the scene before the police arrived. Police took statements from Melissa and Amy and photographed Melissa's injuries. This incident wasn't the first time police had been involved with Wade and Melissa. Their relationship, which began in spring 2019 after meeting through Melissa's ex-boyfriend, was marked by toxicity and abuse. Police were called just weeks into their relationship, and Melissa had reported multiple instances of physical and sexual harm from Wade, including an incident where he got mad over text messages on her phone. Melissa and Wade's relationship reached a breaking point, leading to a harrowing series of events. On one occasion, while they were in the car, Melissa tried to escape. Wearing a skirt without underwear, she ended up running down the street half-clothed. Wade caught up to her, choked her until she passed out, tied her hands with a cord, blindfolded her, and took her back to their house. There, he sexually assaulted her on a boat, claiming to teach her a lesson. Despite this horrific event, charges against Wade were dropped after a month in jail, though he was transferred between counties for other warrants, ultimately spending about 3.5 months in jail before being released on probation. On October 7th, after Wade's brutal assault on Melissa outside her spa, he continued to contact her, alternating between threats and pleas for reconciliation. Melissa, Amy, and the police devised a plan to apprehend Wade. Melissa arranged to meet him at Joe's Crab Shack parking lot, near her spa. Wade agreed, but when confronted by an officer, he refused to get out of the car or hand over the keys. Finding a gap between the officer's car and his own, Wade managed to drive away. Given the risks to the public, the police decided not to pursue him aggressively. Shortly after, a 911 call came in from Joshua, the owner of a printing company, Matter Graphics. Joshua reported that Wade, an acquaintance, had entered one of his buildings in a frantic state. Wade was shirtless, shoeless, wearing sweatpants, covered in blood, and missing a couple of teeth. Joshua was finishing up with a customer when Wade, in a frantic state, entered his shop seeking help to leave town, either by plane or bus.
He was there trying to get a plane ticket or a bus ticket or whatever he could from me to leave town. His demeanor was frantic, in a rush to leave as quickly as he could. And I was with a client at that time, so I told him to give me a moment and I'll be right with him. And once I went into the building,
Wade confided in Joshua that he had killed people.
And what exactly was he saying to you?
said he killed people and he rolled up someone in a carpet or bedding or whatever it was.
Knowing about the earlier incident with Melissa, Joshua tried to calm Wade by suggesting it wasn't as serious as it sounded.
Beating up Mila in the parking lot that morning, and I confronted him on that. I said, if that's all that it is, you're okay if you guys just got into a fight.
Joshua gave Wade a cigarette, told him to stay put, and went to another building to call 911.
And once it kind of set in, I threw a cigarette at him. I said, "Why don't you smoke a cigarette? I'll be right back."
By the time the police arrived, Wade had vanished, leaving behind a black Nissan Versa with blood stains inside. The car was registered to Christine Melton, raising further alarm. Melissa had received calls from an unfamiliar number, which, upon reverse search, belonged to Christine Melton. The police now had Christine's phone and car being used by Wade, with blood in the vehicle. They contacted Christine's cousin Samantha, who hadn't seen Christine but suggested reaching out to her best friend Stephanie. Stephanie informed the police that she and Christine had gone to the Buddha bar the previous night.
Towards the end of the night, as we were walking up to the upstairs bar,
Christine and Stephanie had been best friends since their teenage years in Illinois, eventually relocating to Florida together. At the Buddha bar, they socialized and met two men, Junior and Jason.
Christine and I and JR and another man, Jason, who we were introduced to by JR.
Christine was particularly interested in Junior. The four of them hung out until closing.
Christine and JR seemed to be interested in each other.
After which Christine and Stephanie joined Junior and Jason at Jason's house. They were greeted by Jason's unhappy mother but soon retreated to Jason's bedroom. Christine and Junior began having sex, while Stephanie and Jason drank, smoked, and sat on a trampoline outside.
Christine were having sex pretty quick and getting to it, and me and Stephanie, I think, went out back. I had a trampoline out back, and we went out back. We just sat out there and hung out and talked for a while.
At some point, all three, Jason, Christine, and Junior, did 1 to 2 lines of cocaine. In early morning, Christine, Stephanie, and Junior left Jason's house to return to Christine's duplex. Junior initially tried to drive the stick-shift car, but he couldn't manage it.
Get the car to move, he's just revving the engine in the middle of the street. It was at that point that I got out of the car and said to Christine, I said, "Get out of the car, let's take an Uber. Let's get in an Uber and go home."
The Uber driver parked the car and drove them to Christine's house. Junior lost his phone during the transition. Stephanie had to leave around 6 a.m. to get her son to school and work her morning shift at Duffy's, leaving Christine and Junior alone.
And Christine, I have to go home, I have to go to work, and she was like, okay.
She made sure Christine was comfortable before leaving.
She hugged me and kissed me goodbye and said, "I'll talk to you tomorrow."
Later that day, Stephanie texted Christine, but she didn't respond, which wasn't initially concerning due to their late night. However, when Christine didn't answer calls later, Stephanie called Christine's cousin Samantha, who hadn't heard from Christine either. They shared the previous night's events and began to worry. When police contacted Samantha, she connected them with Stephanie. They all became alarmed and headed to Christine's apartment, where they found police and crime scene tape. Christine's mom lived nearby, so they went to her house until the police spoke with them. They learned that Christine had died. Inside the house, police found bedding between the bedroom and kitchen wrapped around leggings, shirts, and a swimsuit top. When they moved the bedding, they found Christine's body. She had no pulse and had bruising on her face, a swollen eye, and bruises on her torso and arms, indicating a violent struggle. Her broken fingernails showed how fiercely she fought. To recap, Melissa was brutally beaten by her boyfriend Wade. Christine was found dead in her home, having suffered a severe assault. Wade's involvement with both women pointed to his violent behavior escalating to a fatal incident with Christine. Wade had Christine's car and phone and claimed he had killed 2 people. With Christine dead and Junior being the last known person to see her, then it was revealed that Junior was actually Wade Wilson. Wade was now missing, creating a complex and urgent situation for law enforcement to untangle. After Christine's body was found, Stephanie went to the police station to give a statement. She identified Junior from a lineup, revealing his true identity as Wade Wilson. The timeline of events became convoluted, but authorities worked to piece it together. Law enforcement contacted Wade's biological father, Stephen. Stephen had learned he was going to be a father at 14 or 15, and Wade was put up for adoption. Wade was adopted by a couple from their church. At 18, Wade reconnected with Stephen, who helped him with his struggles, including drug addiction, by getting him a motel room and helping him enter rehab in South Florida. Stephen revealed that he had recently spoken to Wade, who said he was in trouble and needed help leaving town. Wade mentioned doing something irreversible and implied that he had killed 2 people.
He just told me, he did something. There was 2 people gone that would not be back. He said, I'm a killer.
Initially, Stephen didn't believe him, thinking Wade might be making up stories due to being under the influence. However, Wade's repeated confessions raised alarm. Stephen relayed this information to the detective, who stressed the importance of contacting Wade. The detective left her phone number with Stephen in case Wade called back. Later that evening, around 9:30 to 10 p.m., further developments were expected. Wade made a 3rd phone call to his father, Stephen, where he confessed to everything. He detailed his argument with Melissa the night before, meeting a girl after the bar, strangling her to death while she slept, and rolling her up in a comforter. Wade tried to put her body in the trunk of her car but couldn't lift her, so he left in her car and met Melissa. Wade explained that after arguing with Melissa, he saw a woman walking down the street. He asked her for directions, and she got into his car. He then choked her while driving, looked for a place to dispose of her body, and ran her over until she was dead.
And she got in the car with him.
What did he say happened once she got in the car with him?
He said he reached over and choked her.
And did he tell you that he choked her while he was driving?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, what did he say happened after he choked her?
He said he was looking for a place to put her body.
Did he find a place where he eventually dumped her body?
Yes, ma'am.
After moving her body, Wade hid out in a local house. Stephen, unaware of Wade's exact location, pretended to send an Uber to pick him up and asked for the address.
And so when you told him that you were going to send him an Uber, did he give you that address?
Yes, ma'am.
Wade gave the address, and Stephen kept him on speakerphone while his wife Melanie relayed information to the detective and U.S. Marshals via text.
What did you then do with the address he gave you?
My wife was messaging with the officer.
So at this point, when he's giving you all this information and you're giving this information to law enforcement, had the second girl's body been found?
No, ma'am.
The marshals contacted the homeowners, who were out of town, and received permission to enter the house and press charges against Wade for breaking and entering. When the marshals called at the house, Wade answered and requested to speak to his father one more time before surrendering. Eventually, Wade came out and was arrested. At the house, Wade had taken a shower, eaten popcorn, drank 5 White Claws, and borrowed the homeowner's clothing. This casual behavior highlighted his disturbed state after committing 2 murders. This is weird. While the investigation was pending, Wade was held with no bond on multiple charges related to the incident with Melissa and for breaking into the house he was hiding out in. By now, you're probably wondering who exactly the second woman was that I mentioned earlier. While all of this craziness was going down with Wade, the Cape Coral Police Department was also investigating another missing person case. That same morning, a purse was found outside a local elementary school and turned into the school resource officer. The purse belonged to a 43-year-old woman named Diane Ruiz. When the officer couldn't get a hold of Diane, he asked another patrol officer to swing by her house to see if she was there and to return her purse. The officer found Diane wasn't home, but her son was. He told the officer to take the purse to her workplace. She worked as a bartender and server at the Moose Lodge. Diane had walked to work that morning since her usual Uber driver wasn't available, a walk that typically took 10 to 15 minutes. When the officer went to the Moose Lodge, Diane wasn't there. She was a no-call no-show, something she had never done before. The police returned to her house, and with her son's direction, Diane was reported as a missing person. Her fiancé came home from work around lunchtime, and a huge search started almost immediately. Diane was listed as missing and endangered, and the community worked together to try to find her while law enforcement quietly connected the dots. 3 days later, on October 10th, law enforcement announced that Christine's murder and Diane's disappearance were believed to be connected. Another clue was that Diane's phone was found in the car Wade was driving. Later that same day, Diane's body was found in an empty woody area. She had significant injuries, including a fractured nasal bone, lacerations, and bruising on her body. On that same day, Wade had an interview with law enforcement where he admitted to killing both Christine and Diane. Autopsies for both women revealed significant internal injuries. Christine had bruising on her organs, including her liver and colon, swelling of the brain, and bruising behind her bladder. Diane had broken ribs, a broken hyoid bone, and damaged tracheal cartilage, among many other injuries. In November, over a month after the murders, Wade was indicted by a grand jury for both Christine and Diane's deaths. A couple of weeks later, the state announced they would seek the death penalty. While in jail awaiting trial, Wade continued to get into trouble, further complicating his case. In October 2020, Wade attempted to escape from jail by sliding a note under an inmate's door, who he referred to as Curtis. The note mentioned Wade's involvement in 2 murders, his desire to escape, and an address for pickup. Curtis' cellmate informed jail staff about the note, the communication through vents, and the pounding sounds from Wade's cell. Upon inspection, jail staff found the window frame removed, the glass cracked, and a bolted metal stool pried off. Wade and his cellmate were charged with attempted escape and criminal mischief. Although Wade's cellmate did not report the plan, he was charged as well due to the small cell size. Wade continued his criminal activities and, in April 2023, was caught in a narcotics scheme. A drug dog discovered a gray grocery bag containing methamphetamine, Xanax, cigarettes, and lighters, leading to Wade's charge for attempted trafficking of methamphetamine. An investigation and subsequent drug bust operation occurred after drugs were found being dropped off at the jail, leading to charges against multiple people inside and outside the jail, including Wade and other inmates involved in smuggling. Despite his frequent trouble in jail, Wade also spoke out publicly, trying to clear his name. He contacted the news multiple times, claiming Christine was alive when he left her and that he merely gave Diane a ride to a bus stop. In 2020, Wade claimed involvement in a human trafficking ring, saying he was framed for the murders when he tried to leave, despite previously confessing to the murders to several people, including his father and Melissa. In 2023, Wade gave his first on-camera interview since being indicted on murder charges, maintaining his innocence and pleading not guilty. He appeared confident and even smug in his orange jumpsuit and new face tattoos, denying the murders and claiming to have tipped off investigators about a plot to kill another woman. According to an arrest report, Trisan Jenden asked Wade to help kill the mother of his child to have his domestic violence charges dropped. Jenden wrote a note to Wade detailing the hit job, offering a $200,000 payout, with the money supposedly in a safe at a funeral and cremation service. Wade, despite being involved in various illegal activities, reported a hit job request to the state attorney's office and became a sworn witness. Over 4.5 years, his trial was delayed for numerous reasons, including his attorney's death and his attempted escape from jail. During the trial, the state introduced evidence, including photographs, Exhibits 10 and 13, with Exhibit 13 being passed around the jury. Melissa testified about an incident at her spa where Wade violently tried to pull her into a car, ripping her dress and tackling her to the ground. She described being beaten with punches, slaps, and choking. Various law enforcement members and witnesses were called to explain the timeline and injuries to Christine and Diane. On the second day, Wade's defense team filed a motion for a mistrial, arguing that an officer's reference to identifying Wade through sheriff's office records could unfairly prejudice the jury by suggesting Wade had a criminal history. The judge denied the motion, and the trial continued with significant testimony, including from Wade's biological father, Stephen. Stephen recounted Wade's confession about meeting a girl at a bar, going back to her house, and choking her after she fell asleep. Wade referred to her derogatorily and mentioned staying in her house for a while before attempting to put her body in her car's trunk. He abandoned the attempt due to the onset of rigor mortis, which made her body too stiff to move, so he left her there and took her car instead. Stephen, Wade's biological father, testified about Wade's confession regarding the second girl he killed. Wade said he picked her up after asking for directions and choked her while driving. He searched for a place to dump her body and, upon finding a location, he realized that she was still breathing. Wade then got back in the car and ran her over until she looked like spaghetti. Stephen described Wade as excited and proud while recounting these events, showing no remorse and going into great detail about the murders. Stephen initially struggled with whether to help Wade or turn him in, but ultimately decided to turn him in, considering what it would feel like if Wade had done this to his daughter, sister, or wife. He also worried about Wade harming others in the future. Other witnesses, including law enforcement members and Diane's family, testified, reinforcing Wade's responsibility for the crimes. On October 7th, an interview recorded 3 days after Wade's arrest was played, where Wade bragged about the killings while eating a burger and fries, though the audio was difficult to hear. After the state rested its case, the defense quickly rested without calling any witnesses, saving their arguments for closing statements. The defense aimed to contest the charge of premeditation, not disputing the deaths but arguing against first-degree murder. They suggested that the timeline and circumstances indicated second-degree murder, also known as depraved mind murder, rather than premeditated murder. The defense argued that the events were driven by impulsive actions and drug influence rather than a calculated plan. They pointed out the involvement of drugs like flakka and cocaine, suggesting these impaired Wade's judgment. The defense acknowledged the depraved nature of Wade's actions but emphasized that they were not premeditated. They highlighted the timeline of the murders, suggesting that Melissa Mons was attacked around 7:30 to 8 a.m., adding context to Wade's actions. The argument aimed to convince the jury that Wade's actions, while horrific and indicative of a depraved mind, did not meet the criteria for premeditated murder. The defense argued against premeditation, suggesting that Wade's actions were driven by an impaired mind rather than a calculated plan. They highlighted that Diane Ruiz was attacked in broad daylight and reiterated that Wade's actions were depraved but not premeditated. The defense pointed out inconsistencies in the timeline and testimony, arguing that Wade's drug use impaired his judgment. In rebuttal, the state emphasized Wade's premeditation and lack of remorse. They cited Wade's derogatory remarks and bragging about the murders to his father and law enforcement. The state pointed out Wade's comments about his intent to kill Diane Ruiz, describing his actions as deliberate and premeditated. They noted Wade's attitude toward his victims, illustrating his complete disregard for human life. Wade's own words indicated he knew he was going to kill Ruiz even as he pretended to help her. The state highlighted Wade's cold and calculated actions, arguing that his intent and mindset clearly showed premeditation. Wade Wilson's actions and words provided strong evidence of pre-planned murder, as argued by the prosecution. In his confession to detectives, Wilson detailed how he strangled Diane Ruiz multiple times before ultimately running her over until she died, demonstrating clear intent and deliberation. He admitted that after killing Christine Melton, he decided to kill again, indicating a repeated, conscious decision to commit murder. Wilson's defense tried to argue that his actions were influenced by drugs and alcohol, suggesting impaired judgment rather than premeditation. However, the prosecution countered this by emphasizing that other individuals who partied with Wilson also used drugs and alcohol but did not commit murder. They pointed out that Wilson's behavior showed awareness and intentionality, such as seeking a plane or bus ticket to leave town, which indicated he was fully conscious of his actions and their consequences. The prosecution highlighted Wilson's bragging and detailed confessions, which included graphic descriptions of his violent acts and his predatory mindset, to argue that his crimes were premeditated. They stressed that drugs and alcohol were not valid defenses for his deliberate actions, which were calculated and intentional. The evidence and Wilson's own words illustrated a clear pattern of premeditated murder. The narrative details the aftermath of a crime committed by an individual who, despite being sober and clear-minded, sought help from his father to escape after committing the crime. He exhibited no signs of mental health issues and bragged about his actions to both his father and the detectives, showing no remorse. The defense attempted to argue mental health issues, but there was no evidence supporting this claim. The jury quickly returned a guilty verdict after just over 2 hours of deliberation. The sentencing phase, which the defense aimed to focus on to spare the perpetrator's life, began with a victim impact statement from Christine's cousin, Samantha. She described Christine as a beloved and valuable individual with a unique personality, highlighting the personal loss and the value of Christine's life. The passage is a heartfelt victim impact statement describing Christine's character and the deep loss felt by her family and friends. Christine is remembered as a joyful, loving, and protective individual who brought happiness and a sense of safety to those around her. She was especially cherished by children and had a special bond with her family, including being a beloved aunt and godmother. Her adventurous spirit and love for life were evident in her passion for traveling, camping, concerts, and themed parties. The loss of Christine has had a devastating impact on her family, particularly her mother, who could not attend the trial due to declining health and has since moved to Maryland to be cared for by her son. Christine's cousin Samantha speaks about the promise she made to Christine's mother to see the trial through and how the family has endured the painful process of seeking justice. The emotional toll of losing Christine to murder is described as a wound that will never heal, profoundly altering the lives of those who loved her. The statement emphasizes that while the prosecution won the trial, Christine's family and friends have only experienced loss and heartache. Her mother was not able to witness these accomplishments and expresses the emotional struggles faced since her death, including trust issues, severe depression, and the constant pain of her absence. They recall the devastating impact of her disappearance and the community's awareness of her death before they were informed. The loss of their mother remains a profound and enduring wound. The passage also mentions the defense calling expert witnesses to discuss the mental health of Mr. Wilson, who was examined by Dr. Einstein, a neuroschistosomiasis expert. Dr. Einstein reviewed extensive records indicating that Mr. Wilson had a history of psychiatric and psychological issues spanning over 10 years. The passage provides an account of the psychiatric evaluation of Wade, detailing his long-term treatment with various psychotropic medications like lithium and Celexa. These medications are used for major mental illnesses, including psychosis and depression. Wade has been diagnosed with several mental health conditions over the years, including bipolar disorder, depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, antisocial personality disorder, and adjustment disorder. Dr. Einstein concluded that Wade suffers from neurocognitive brain impairment due to sports-induced head injuries in childhood and a car crash, exacerbated by substance abuse. Dr. Mills, a forensic psychiatrist with extensive experience, also evaluated Wade. Despite his expertise, Dr. Mills faced challenges due to Wade's lack of cooperation and paranoia about jail staff listening in on their sessions. Dr. Mills administered 2 psychological tests to Wade, both of which were invalidated due to Wade exaggerating symptoms, indicating a non-compliant attitude. Despite these challenges, Dr. Mills observed that Wade could be articulate and make eye contact when he chose to, but he also exhibited excessive vigilance and paranoia throughout their interactions. These psychiatric impressions were reinforced through multiple sessions with Wade. In his sessions with Dr. Mills, Wade did not express clear delusions but showed signs of excessive vigilance and possible paranoia, suspecting that guards might be listening. Dr. Mills noted that while the guards were not obviously eavesdropping, Wade's concerns could not be entirely dismissed as delusional. Due to the unreliability of Wade's test results, Dr. Mills relied heavily on information from those around Wade and Dr. Einstein's findings to form his opinion. Dr. Mills often has more detailed information from hospital records, but in this case, he characterized Wade's disorder based on available data. The state called Dr. Hero, a clinical and forensic neuroschistosomiasis expert, who argued that Wade's behavior, such as planning and seeking help after the murders, indicated good executive function and contradicted claims of frontal lobe damage. Dr. Hero pointed out that Wade could perform daily activities, drive, socialize, and seek help when needed, suggesting no significant impairment in executive function. During closing arguments, the prosecution argued for the death penalty, emphasizing that the murders were premeditated and planned, as demonstrated by Wade's actions and behavior before and after the crimes. The prosecution aimed to prove that Wade had a substantial period of reflection, starting from his time at the Buddha Lounge, where he was socializing and later discarded the woman. Wade Wilson meticulously planned his attacks on Christine Melton and Diane Ruiz. He used his charm to approach Christine at the Buddha Lounge and waited until they were alone in her home to attack her. He similarly targeted Diane, attacking her in his car after isolating her. The prosecution emphasized that Wade's actions were premeditated and calculated, as he selected, isolated, and murdered his victims when they were most vulnerable. The defense argued that Wade's actions were influenced by his mental health issues and substance abuse, claiming he was not in a clear state of mind during the attacks. They suggested that his behavior on October 7th was not indicative of premeditation but rather a result of impaired judgment from drug use, mental illness, and a lack of control. During the trial, expert witnesses testified about Wade's mental health. Dr. Einstein and Dr. Mills noted his long history of psychiatric issues and paranoia, but Dr. Hero argued that Wade's ability to plan and execute the murders demonstrated intact executive function. The jury recommended the death penalty, with 9 out of 12 jurors supporting it for Christine's murder and 10 out of 12 for Diane's murder. The final decision will be held on 23 of July. If sentenced to death, Wade's defense may appeal, arguing that the new Florida death penalty law requiring a majority jury recommendation should not apply retroactively to his case. Wade showed no remorse throughout the trial, and his lack of emotion during the verdict further highlighted his chilling demeanor. In the end, I ask you a question. Do you really think that Wilson's killing of 2 women was pre-planned? Answer me in the comments section. It's open to you. If you found this video interesting, then hit the like button and subscribe to the Crime Shade YouTube channel for watching more chilling crime stories videos. Stay safe.